Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Sarah Harper from the Fitchburg Art Museum. Sarah serves as the Terry and Eva Herndon Assistant Curator, and she was the curator of the current exhibition entitled Kaleidoscope, 100 Years of Collecting for Our Community. This is the second in a series of exhibitions marking the Fitchburg Art Museum's centennial. For a century, the Fitchburg Art Museum has served as a cultural gathering place where art, history, and community come together. Kaleidoscope celebrates that extraordinary legacy by exploring the museum's rich and diverse collection through the lens of the people it was created to serve, the community itself. Through painting, sculpture, photography, textiles, and decorative arts, visitors are invited to see how collecting is not simply about preserving objects, but about preserving memories, identities, and shared experiences across generations. During the program, we'll learn why and how the exhibition came about. We'll go on a behind the scenes tour and in the process come to better understand and appreciate how, like the shifting patterns of a kaleidoscope, the exhibition reveals changing perspectives, artistic movements, and stories that have shaped both the museum and the region over the past 100 years. Let's start by meeting Sarah. Welcome. So delighted to be able to be here.
Thank you.
First of all, just congratulations for this important contribution to the museum's centennial. Eager to hear much more about it and have you inform viewers. But Sarah, before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest if you'd share briefly a little bit more about your background, perhaps academic, professional interest, your current position, please.
Yeah, so I graduated with my master's from Boston University in 2024. And immediately after I started this position here as the assistant curator, in my own kind of personal studies, I study modern and contemporary African art with a focus on Moroccan modernism. So
Hmm.
that is kind of my lens. I kind of look at art and study art. But at the same time, here at the Fitchburg Art Museum, our three collection highlights are American art, photography, and African art. And so I'm able to definitely help out with the African part,
Mhm.
but along with everything else as well. And that is something you'll see throughout talking about the Kaleidoscope exhibition, is we wanted to be able to highlight all three of those components of our collection.
Well, I know the first exhibition for the Centennial was a blockbuster highlighting the museum's Africa collection. So I'm sure you are heavily involved with that enterprise. But moving on to Kaleidoscope, what was your guiding vision when you began shaping the show?
Yeah, so Emily Mazzola is our head curator here. And so we really developed the exhibition together. And I was mostly under her guidance.
Okay.
But we really wanted to celebrate our collection. And the best way to do that, we thought, was to show as much art as possible and to show art from the brand new contemporary artwork, and then also artwork that has been a part of the collection from the very beginning. And in addition to old, very old things. So we kind of have this, we made sure that we have some of the oldest things on display, in addition to some of the oldest things that have been in our possession, some of the newest things on display, and the newest things we've had in our possession. So there's kind of those two areas of timelines that we wanted to make sure we hit. Um, but the best way to really show as much art as possible, as you can see behind me,
Yeah.
is with a salon style hang. So that means salon style is a historic form of displaying artwork, and it refers to these European salons, which were really like gathering places for people. And there were official shows in like the French government would have a salon, and then they would rank the artwork and give prizes to different artwork.
Hmm.
But historically, you would have history paintings were the most important. So history paintings include um, themes of um, well, history themes like scenes from history, but then also religious scenes or scenes that uh, imagery that has some sort of a moral lesson. They normally were really large scale, and they would be hung normally at eye level. And then other artwork that was less important, that was considered less important or less prestigious, like still lives or portraits and landscapes, they would be hung above eye level or way below eye level.
Ah,
And so there was this very strict hierarchy that was happening within a
ah,
historical salon style hang. And what we wanted to do was disrupt that hierarchy. So our artwork, as you can see behind me, we have sculpture, we have paintings, and then we also have color photography in this room, all
hmm.
mixed together. And even photography historically was considered a lesser art form because it was considered more of you're just taking a picture of reality. But we are disrupting that by putting everything together. And some of our most famous artists are hung pretty high. Not all of them, but you still have to give weight to the best of of the best. But
Hmm.
for the most part, it was more about creating interesting juxtapositions with the art and trying to make visual harmony than it was about what like this is the most important artwork, so we need this to be in this specific position and at eye level.
Were there any discoveries that surprised you during the process of curating, of going through the extensive collection?
Yes, there were a lot of surprises. So the initial stages of how we put this together, a lot of people are always interested in that because it's very overwhelming to walk into this space, I think, for a
Yeah.
lot of people. And to think about how, yeah, like how to conceptualize creating it, I think it can be difficult. But what we did is the first step was we looked through the entire collection as much as we could.
Wow.
So, and like actually laid eyes on it. And so I think Emily and I probably have seen 80% of the collection with our own eyes
Whoa.
at least.
Wow.
And our collection, we hold about 8,000 objects. And there's over 500 objects on display in Kaleidoscope. So we do have about 7% of the collection through Kaleidoscope on display. And then with Festival, the African art collection show that was our first Centennial show, that has over 200 objects. So altogether, we do have
Wow.
about 10% of the collection on display, which is pretty incredible because most
Most
museums only have
definitely.
like
Most
less than
definitely.
1% is the norm for museums. Um, but anyway, yeah, so we looked through as much of the art as we could, and we tagged different artwork that we thought we want to use. And that was the first step. Then we moved all of the artwork that we tagged into these two galleries while they were empty. And then we made sure we had photos of everything, and we put it on an online program called Spoke. It's like an interior design
Mm.
program.
Mhm.
And so we used that as a way to play, basically. We put the photos in and
Mm.
we just arranged in different ways
Fun.
the walls. And we're trying to think about it that way because it's a lot quicker to do it online than it is to look at everything in person as the initial step. So then once we had what we thought was a good wall arranged online, we would take the artwork out and look at the artwork next to each other.
Mm,
And because photos never look the same as the actual artwork. So you don't know how the colors are going to interact in real life and even the textures and things.
mhm.
And so we still had to make sure they looked good together. And sometimes they looked great and it was exactly how we
Ah,
imagined it. And in other times it looked really bad. And, you know, the colors clashed or
wow.
the
Mhm.
white just like wasn't a real white or something like that. And so at that point, we would have to rearrange and we'd go back to the computer and come up with other artwork that could go pair well with something. And sometimes we just did it in person at that point because we have the artwork there. Maybe a lot of times I would be, we'd be looking at something and we'd think, oh, I remember this one artwork that I saw when we looked through the
Mm.
collection, and we'd go and try to find that and then see how that would work together. And so, like, through the process of looking through the entire collection, were definitely a lot of surprises where just little even funny things like, oh, we actually have a lot of artwork with monkeys on it. Or, it's like things you don't really think about, but when you're actually looking through, you see these weird themes of our collection that
That's
were kind of
great. That's
interesting.
great. You know, why was the idea of Kaleidoscope the right way to frame this exhibition?
So we hadn't, when we started making the exhibition, we didn't have a name yet. And I think we had maybe 80% of this room hung. When we started having very small groups, because the museum was closed for months so that we could install this and also make improvements on our storage. And we had a couple small groups come in and we asked them what their first reaction was, and what words came to their mind. And I don't remember exactly how kaleidoscope that specific word came to be, but I know that people were just very, words that came to mind were awe or wonder um, and even kind of an overwhelming sense of because there's just so much to look at. And when we were thinking about it, a kaleidoscope has that sense of there's so many different things to look at.
Mm.
And also it changes. So you can easily change it and shift your perspective and see something completely different, completely unique pattern that will never be repeated. And so I think we liked that idea of how the artwork, while the artwork's not shifting, our perspective of the artwork can change. You can turn around and see a different wall, and then that's a change. But even trying to find these visual relationships between the different artwork, different people see different things. And that's one of the great things about being here and being able to take the time with the art to make your own connections is something that we wanted to happen.
And it sort of highlights the value of community, which is a big part of the exhibition about the museum. But it's been fascinating to hear you recant um, the process going through the works and inviting people to give their impressions, and that leading to the title. You know, we're fortunate that you've assembled some images to give us an even better sense of how things are laid out and to highlight a few different areas or particular works of art. So, if we could segue to some of the images that you're ready to screen share, that would be a great thing to do right now.
Yeah, so this is the mezzanine where you can see the title vinyl for Kaleidoscope there, and then our 100 years of collecting. And the mezzanine is a particularly special place for this exhibition in that we really wanted to honor our founder, Eleanor Norcross.
Ah,
So Eleanor Norcross was born and raised in Fitchburg I believe she was born in 1853, but I might be wrong on the exact date. And her father was a prominent politician. He was actually the first mayor of Fitchburg and went on to become a state senator. And she lost her mom and her brother at a young age. And so it was only her and her dad for most of her life until he died. And he was very supportive of her becoming an artist. So she studied at what is now the Massachusetts College of Art and Design. She went to New York, where she studied with the famous American Impressionist William Merritt Chase. And then he encouraged her to go to Paris. So in
Mm.
Paris, she continued her studies, and one of the main things that she would do is she would go to the galleries of the Louvre, and she would um, paint the galleries, which is unusual. So these are examples, the three paintings that are kind of in the middle of the porcelain. Those are all of her paintings. And usually when artists would go to art museums, it's very common for an artist to go to a museum and copy an old masters paintings,
Mhm.
as for an example. But they would usually do that to learn from the old masters, like Rembrandt or something, so that they could try to learn their techniques and hone their own style. But Eleanor, she did a little bit of that. She did a little bit of copying old masters, but the main thing she did was paint the decorative arts and the galleries kind of as a whole.
Mm.
And she did this because she sent the paintings back to Fitchburg because she wanted the people of Fitchburg
Mm.
to experience the beauty of art from within the Louvre. And so it really just kind of demonstrates that desire of Eleanor's to share art and beauty. And when she also, while she was in France, she started collecting artwork herself, mostly decorative arts and some prints, and a lot of like wooden panels and fabrics and things like that. And she also would send those back to Fitchburg. And when she died, she bequeathed her collection and some money to the city of Fitchburg to create an art center, which eventually became the Fitchburg Art Museum. And so we really just, the mezzanine is really there to honor Eleanor.
Mm.
And we did that through the placement of every wall, or almost every wall, has one of her paintings, at least one of her paintings,
Ah.
at least one thing that she collected, um, and then usually contemporary artwork we put in dialogue with her artwork and her collection items. So this is a really good example where she has the paintings of the porcelain, like the clock there. And then these are plates and things that she collected.
Mm.
This artwork of the woman painted white with a rope is a photograph called Freedom Trap by Maria Magdalena Campos Pons, who's a contemporary artist from Cuba. And she has African descent. She's an Afro-Cuban artist.
Mm.
And so a lot of her artwork has to do with slavery, and then also kind of sugar plantations and the relationship between uh, like African descent, people of African descent within the Caribbean. And something that we did with this juxtaposition, there's a visual juxtaposition of commonality between the ropes on her face and then the lattice work on this cover.
Mm.
But then there's also a less specifically visual connection, where this pot here is actually specifically for hot chocolate. It's a French like hot chocolate uh,
Uh-huh.
pitcher. And so because Maria Campos Pon's artwork has to do with the slave trade and sugarcane plantations, there's this connection as well with sugarcane, and then what makes hot chocolate taste good is the sugar.
Mm.
So, there's like
Nice.
small little there's a few we also made connections. You have to go beyond the surface. But there also are always ones that you can appreciate, connections you can appreciate just through looking.
Oh, very thoughtful. Please continue.
So over here, these plates are actually a contemporary artwork by I'm forgetting their first names, but Chantal and Sakari, and it's called Shelter in Plates. And they were witnesses of in Watertown of the Boston Marathon bombing manhunt. And so the photos there's actually printed photos directly onto these plates. And you can
Hmm.
see it of these soldiers going to, or SWAT team members knocking
Yeah.
on people's doors. And so this is also a really interesting juxtaposition where plates are very domestic objects. They're very kind of, I would say, they're safe. They're associated with the home and, and eating and things and decoration. Of course, there's a bunch of decorative plates over here. But they kind of are showing how the domestic space was interrupted through this pretty violent situation with the Boston Marathon bombing and the manhunt that ensued afterward, and the unsettled nature of how people felt in that time. And so that this is just another really interesting and also an important part of more local history that is incorporated through these plates and making these connections across different times and
Yeah.
and showing also like in this case how contemporary artists use other forms of like historic forms of art or they're using these domestic plates to show a different message. So we have all sorts of things like that throughout the exhibition.
Wow, that is fascinating to hear the connections that you and your colleagues have made over the course of the 100 years through similar materials. But really interesting. So, in addition to the hundreds of objects, to then come to appreciate all the thought that you put into going beyond that and connections. Definitely have multiple visits to truly appreciate the exhibition. Speaking of that, what do you hope visitors take away after seeing Kaleidoscope?
I think we really just want them to, especially people who are from Fitchburg, we want them to know that we are doing this for them. We are stewarding these objects and taking care of these objects for the community of Fitchburg and then the wider North Central Massachusetts community. And uh, we want people to see the museum as a friendly space that anybody can go to at any time. And as a part of that, for our centennial, the 4-year period of our centennial, because we were established as an organization in 1925, but we opened our doors in 1929. So we're kind of have this 4-year period of celebrating our centennial, and we are at now free admission.
Hmm.
So you can truly just walk in for 10 minutes if you want and then walk out, which I think is very good, especially for this exhibition, because you're right. I think it's one where
Yeah.
people will want to go to multiple times. Um, but yeah, and we want people, I think, to realize kind of the diversity of art and how there's so many different ways of creating and ways of expressing yourself and it's all valid and all beautiful. And well, it's not necessarily all beautiful, I suppose, but it's all at the very least it's interesting. Not a lot of contemporary artists don't want their work to be beautiful, but um and yeah, just to we want people to be able to have a connection with the art.
Nicely put. How do you see exhibitions like this shaping the museum's future?
I think that I don't know if we will ever do an exhibition like this again, I will say, because it's a massive exhibition. It took 6 months just to install it.
Wow.
Um, and so it would be it's a very rare occurrence that we'd have something quite at this scale. But I do know that we do really enjoy combining historical artwork with contemporary artwork from the collection, because we like being able to show the connections through history, and especially it creates a more an easier entry point into contemporary art, because contemporary art can be quite um, like intellectual in ways and very conceptual. And so in terms of that, I think we always are trying to create exhibitions that are open, that that we try to make some them so that everybody can understand them. Um, and I think in terms of like collecting for the future of the museum, this is in the process of creating this show, we realized we do have areas in the collection where we'd love to grow. So we would love to bolster our collection of Native American artwork, for example.
Mhm.
And I think we would love to incorporate more contemporary African artwork too. So there's things like that where we are constantly thinking about how can we fill gaps within the collection too.
What's been some of the reaction and feedback from the community, perhaps others, to the exhibition?
From my understandings, I'm not one of the frontline people who are always communicating with the public, but from everything I've heard, people are really excited about it. They really love being able to see this much artwork all at once. And we did make sure to put in some of the community favorites. So, uh, we have this a painting called On Guard. I forget who painted it, but it's like of these sheep. It's like a dog, and then these like sheep, and people love that painting, and so we incorporated that one. Um, and so I think people are happy that they're able to see the highlights of artwork that, if they are from around here and grew up coming to the museum, there's artwork that used to always be on display. It was on
Hmm.
permanent display that they can now see again, 20, 30 years later. And so I think there's an excitement for that aspect of the old classics are on display. And I think there's also the excitement of just actually being able to see so much of the collection, and
Yeah.
what we're holding for the community. And so, yes, for the most part, I think it's been very positive, though I do know that people also feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, especially for Fitchburg residents, the wonderful opportunity and encouragement to come back time and again to appreciate this and so many of the other wonderful exhibitions that occur over the course of each year. Well, Sarah, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank you again so much for taking the time to be here. It's been incredibly informative hearing about the history and the development of the exhibition, the thoughtfulness that you and your colleagues have put into this incredible accomplishment. Look forward to visiting soon. And in closing, just want to wish you continued success with future endeavors.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be on the show, and I hope people want to come and see the exhibition in person because it is quite the sight.
Most definitely. And in closing credits, we'll be sure to put museum's website and other contact information so people can keep up to date on both this exhibition and future developments. So
Great. Yeah.
thanks again. And also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.